Welcome to Film Courage. This is episode 163. I'm Karen Warden.
And I'm David Brandon. You can find our archives on iTunes, Movie Garage, as well as filmcourage.com.
Today we are speaking with filmmaker Mike Stutz, whose documentary, Don't Change the Subject, takes a comedic look at suicide.
Mm-hmm. Don't Change the Subject is a beautiful film on a serious subject that will surprise you. It's a documentary about suicide. It might be something that would scare many people. However, Mike takes you on a journey with Don't Change the Subject that is more of a bold look at life. Yeah. What was and bringing to the surface many things people don't want to discuss, but he does it in sort of a safe, light way where you just want to keep watching the movie.
Yeah, he does an amazing job celebrating the memories of those who have passed on and also the personal accounts of others who've attempted suicide and lived to tell about it, leaving the viewer with a glimpse of what makes life worth living.
Don't Change the Subject peppers in humor to keep it from being morose and tragic, still giving respect to those who have passed on by their own will.
Please welcome to Film Courage, Mike Stutz. Welcome, Mike.
There we go.
Thanks
very glad to be here. You guys do a great job, so glad to be a part of the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Well, in order to talk about the documentary, Mike, please tell us about your upbringing. Since this is a through line throughout the entire film, how did suicide enter your life?
Well, when I was a kid, my mom suffered from clinical depression, and she was an actress and a writer herself, and she was pretty sick the last couple of years of her life. She was in and out of hospitals, and she ended her life just before my 12th birthday. Then years later, a woman named Judith moved in, who was my stepmother, and was a great stepmom, and we knew each other for 30 years or so. And in the last year of Judith's life, for the first time, she started talking about the fact that her father, too, had killed himself. And not only had her father killed himself, but it was in very similar circumstances at an age close to the age I was when my mom died. And I thought, if we weren't talking about suicide, then no one was talking about suicide. That it's such a taboo subject that even in our own family, a family who was able to talk to each other about other things, it just didn't come up, and it was never the right time. You never knew how to broach the subject, and that made me want to make this film, and not only to get the ball rolling and hopefully help some other people to talk about suicide, but also to honor those that we lost, to honor my mother and to honor Judith's father, Cal. Both of them were very vibrant, life-filled, interesting, life-of-the-party type of people. I think that there's a misconception sometimes, oh, someone killed themselves or someone suffered from depression, so that means that they were always really down and sort of shut away, and that was not the case, and that's not the case with a lot of people we lose. So I wanted to make a film to honor them, to honor their lives, and honor who they were, and not just dwell on the last day, the last hours. That's not what it's about when someone dies of suicide.
Yeah, and your film is very apparent. It shows that very much, that you do celebrate these lives in a very light way, although it's a tragic subject, but you do, I think, leave the viewer with some sense of hope while watching the film. You seem comfortable discussing your mother's passing. I realize it did happen a while ago, but so many people have been taught to cloak family secrets, to hide them. There's the saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. When you tell people about your mother's passing, what is the typical reaction?
Well, it's amazing. Well, I had someone apologize to me a week ago. My mother died 33 years ago. And someone made a reference in passing that people do. They said, oh my God, if I don't, finish this project, I'm going to kill myself. And then sent me an email saying, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I said that. And that's considerate, and I understand it. But, I think that people are afraid you're going to break if they say anything, that if they, who knows how Mike's going to react. Of course it was a tragedy. Of course it was, a very tough time in my life. But I want to talk about it. And everybody goes through difficult experiences. Everyone faces challenges in their life. And And I think that people shouldn't fear. I find so often when I talk to people who have had suicide in their family or have maybe attempted themselves, that after seeing the movie, they sort of breathe a sigh of relief. Like, good, finally, we're talking about it. Finally, they can use the film as a jumping off point to just talk and clear the air and not be so concerned about, like, oh, what if I say the wrong word? What if what if I offend the person that I'm talking to? My advice to someone, if you know someone that's gone through it, is, of course, be sensitive about it. Of course, understand that everybody has different reactions, but talk to them about it. If you have questions or you have concerns about them or anything, talk to them about it. I bet they will want to talk about it. And you're right. It is, families especially are good at hiding secrets. Families are extra special good at figuring out ways not to talk about stuff. And that makes it so much worse and so much more of a challenge as strange thoughts sort of accumulate and misinformation and people let things build in their minds. It gets much worse than it would be if you just talk about it.
That's great.
Mike, I'm wondering, sort of aside from your mom's death, has death been very present in your entire life? Because for me, I kind of grew up where I didn't really have to face death really until the last 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden I've really had to face it quite a bit. And I'm just wondering, for you, has it come up quite a bit throughout your entire life?
Well, I'm sorry that you've been going through that. I know that's how difficult that must be, but no, I have had it around. But I think, interestingly for me, my mother's death helped me to understand in a way how fragile our existence is on this earth. That you can't just say, well, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it in 10 years, or you don't know that you're always going to have an infinite amount of time with people, or you're going to have an infinite amount of time on this planet. So I think that my mom's death helped me to understand that you should enjoy the days that you're here. I would say that in my life, death has probably been no more prevalent than in a lot of people's lives. But while we were making this film, Judith, my stepmom, was dying of cancer. And so she was actually in hospice care during the entire time that we were filming. And that really helped to inform the film as well. That seeing her, what she was going through, seeing what was important to her, seeing her want to talk about not only her father, but about family life in general, and seeing how much life meant to her was a good reminder that you really need to do what you need to do. That don't put it off. If you have something to say or you have something to do, and in my case it was making this movie, do it. That doesn't mean you can just drop everything and start tomorrow, but make plans, make it happen. So I think in some ways Judith was a real driving force behind this movie, and thankfully even though she was in a lot of pain in her last months, she followed very closely what we were doing. She asked about what we were shooting. She asked about who we were interviewing, how it was going. She did a series of interviews with us as well for the movie. And she got to see the first rough cut of the movie 3 days before she died. It would have been the last thing that she saw, the last movie that she saw. So, and she loved it,
Wow. That's really powerful.
I'm wondering, what was your takeaway when you found out from Judith that her father had died under very similar circumstances as your mother? I mean, did you feel that there was some type of spiritual reason that she had come into your life? Or I know,
I don't know if it was kismet or not. But I'm very glad she did come into my life, and she taught me many, many great things, and I think that she learned them. She had a great sort of patience and a warm accepting of life that came at her. And I allow myself to get stressed out and caught up in a lot of things. And I think that her life experiences and a lot of the challenges that which she went through when she was young helped form her as an adult, as a very balanced adult. And that helped me a lot as a person. So I don't know whether it was meant to be, but I'm really glad that Judith was a part of my life.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. So many indie filmmakers, they want to make horror films with teens running around being chased in the woods in their underwear. And you've chosen to do something.
I go to those films as well.
You go, okay, that's your next one. But so many people don't want to talk about suicide for whatever reason, their own thoughts of it that they don't want to expose, religious reasons, whatever.
Sure.
Let's go back to why you felt you need to make this film that would probably scare a lot of people. But it doesn't once you see it, but in theory.
Yeah. Oh, it scares everybody. Yeah. I mean, we, as the article that I wrote for your site says, we managed to sort of scare off everyone. We scare people who don't want to talk about suicide, and then people who are involved in the suicide community are scared that, well, what if we say the wrong thing? So yeah, we made a film that absolutely everyone can find a reason not to watch. But the nice thing about it was I wanted to make a film, in a sense, I wanted to make a film that I would have wanted to see when I was a kid, after my mom died. And I wanted to make a film for everyone outside, everyone in the suicide community who would cringe at being called a part of the suicide community. That I was a punky, odd, weird kid, and I know that a lot of filmmakers out there perhaps might fit into that description. And I made this movie. I'm sure not you guys. You're very normal, very.
I was in the Young Republicans Club.
Yeah, exactly. So I made this film for everyone who feels like an oddball and a freak, and feels like they're the only one feeling these odd feelings. I made this film for a kid sitting in a dorm room who maybe is having some trouble and feels like nobody's gone through an experience like they've gone through. One of the things we're doing with the movie is getting it out there to colleges, getting it out there to people, to teens, to anyone who can. It's almost sort of handing it off on the street to just. My dream is someone finds one on a bus stop, goes home, watches it, and thinks, well, maybe I should stick around, And I never made the movie thinking that, oh, we're going to make money off of this. And I did not make the movie thinking, well, this is going to be the big one. We're going to get, everyone's going to get famous. You don't make a funny suicide documentary looking for fame. But I did make it for a kid who does not respond to what I would call sort of the typical movie about suicide, which tends to have sort of soft lighting and low speech. And I'm not mocking it. It is a very valuable tool for a lot of people to have that, very therapeutic, talk through it type thing. Either that or there are films that just show a lot of bodies, which I don't love either. I made it for the other person, I made it for the person who feels that no one's quite like them in the world. And I'm not like them, because everybody's an individual, but I do know what it's like to feel that way. I think the great thing now is that you can make movies like that this movie didn't cost $500,000 or $1 million, or, that because digital video is so good and editing systems and everything else that I don't know that I could have made this movie 15 years ago. And I think that more and more, and I see on your site, obviously, with many of the filmmakers and with you guys, who I know you have a film premiering next month, I believe, yes? Yeah. We have something to say, and now finally we have the tools to say it. And so I can make a movie saying, hey, if I reach, if only 10,000 people see this, then there may be 1,000 people who are really affected by it, and maybe there's a few who actually stick around, and that to me is a good reason to make a movie. And that... Oh, I'm sorry, yeah?
Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say, it's great, too, because you're right. So many people have trouble reaching out, especially, too, because is it against the law to threaten suicide, or they'll arrest you or put you in a hold?
It's not so much usually a legal thing. There are a lot of different reasons. A lot of people think of, if I'm suicidal, then I'm weak. If I'm feeling depressed, because depression's a really bad term to start with, because people think of being depressed as, oh, my football team lost, oh, I'm so depressed, or I'm having trouble with my girlfriend, I'm feeling depressed. That's not depression. Depression is a long-term disease that is just as real as cancer or broken legs or anything else, and it is something that can debilitate you. I mean, my mother could not get out of bed for weeks and months at a time when she was finally sort of nearing the end of her life. So I think there are a lot of people who mean well, who tell someone who's depressed or maybe even feeling suicidal, hey, buck up, like it'll be okay. I've been depressed, right? I've had the blues. I've felt bad. You just got to work through it, and that just makes them feel worse. Right. Don't compare yourself to them. Talk to them. Listen to them. And understand that they're going through something real. Over and over, when I've been out at a lot of colleges talking to students, and over, I'm amazed at how few students understand that depression's a disease, and that what they're feeling is something that a lot of people feel to some degree at some point in their life. Again, they feel like they're the only one feeling this way, that they're weak, and that if they reach out, that somehow they're reflecting their own weakness, right? And there are all sorts of other reasons. I mean, yes, religion can certainly play into it, which we touch on in the movie. A lot of people feel that just even addressing it, that this is a sin, and a lot of people also have very difficult, challenging feelings if they have someone they know that died of suicide, because they feel, well, maybe they went to hell. And one of the things we talk about in the movie is that even the Catholic Church now has changed the stance. It is no longer a mortal sin in the Catholic Church, which is important, because my stepmother's father, Cal, they were Catholics. He was a pillar in their church, and they wouldn't bury him in the churchyard. And it was treated as a shameful thing that he did. And that was devastating to the family and really pushed a lot of silence. So there are a lot of things. There are also cultural, a lot of cultures, have a lot of difficulty, again, with that sense of weakness or taboo. And so what I'm trying to do with the movie, and not just me, what a lot of great organizations out there who are working to fight, against suicide and to help support people who've gone through the thing, are saying is that there's absolutely no shame to feeling this way, but talk to someone, whether it's talking to friends, whether it's talking to family about the way you feel, or if you don't want to talk to them, 800-273-TALK is the National Suicide Hotline. You are not a crazy person if you call a suicide hotline. They will just listen to you. They're not going to come hunt you down. They're going to listen. They're going to try and help you. They're going to try and hook you up with someone who might be able to help you if you want that help. And if you know someone that is feeling this way, you can also call that suicide hotline. Again, 800-273-TALK, which is on our website as well. You can call them and ask them, how can I help my friend? What can I say to them? How do I approach this? Can you help me? Where can I get them resources? And they will get those for you. If we can do one thing with this movie, and a very gratifying thing is we already have with a fair amount of folks, it is to break down that wall and say there is no shame in feeling bad and in feeling depressed, whether it's for a night, whether it's for a week, whether it's for 10 years, and that it's real, and that you are going through something very real. That if you had cancer, or if you broke your arms, or if you were in a car accident, you went to the hospital, everyone would say, oh my God, how can I help you? What's going on? How are you feeling? But when you feel depression, a lot of times people will really treat it with somewhat of derision. They'll either say buck up, or worse, say, well, you need to get over it. You stop feeling sorry for yourself. Depression is not feeling sorry for yourself. Sure. And that's what we're trying to get across with the movie.
Sure, or be grateful for what you have and things like that.
Yeah, and all that's good. I mean, positive vibes are all good. I'm not saying that you're not wrong to want to say positive things to someone, but you are wrong to think that, well, if they just walked around the block, like, they would be okay, that it would all be okay. Like, if you just walked around the block, your cancer might go away. Like, that's the equivalent. Plug in cancer when you're thinking of depression. And people do recover from cancer, and people do recover from depression. But before you say it, think: would I say this to someone with what society accepts as a very serious disease? Well, take a bath and your cancer will get better, right?
Right. Well, I think too, for women, it's easier to admit to depression than it is for men, right? Because for men, it's like, oh, he's weak, or what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
And so there's a big stigma for men, I think, whereas a lot of men don't want to get help for it. Is that right?
Yeah, and more women attempt suicide, but more men succeed at it. I believe, and again, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a statistician, but my understanding is that one of the leading groups who actually succeed at suicide are white men in their 40s and 50s in a lot of, like, Montana, Arizona, Idaho, in more isolated area with access to guns, less access to someone to talk to, and who may fall into that category of, I've always done everything myself, and so I'm not gonna talk to someone about this. It affects all different age groups. It's a huge killer of young people. It's the #2 killer of college age kids, and it's up there. I believe it's close to surpassing even alcohol related deaths. So it runs the spectrum. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of men out there who, again, I'm not weak. They would rather die than talk.
Sure.
And what I'm saying is talk. You can die later. Let's talk now. Let's talk for today. And it's not going to be today is one message that's out there. Like, you know what? Stick around. Give it some time. Because over and over, I talked to a lot of people who attempted, and over they said that after they got past that attempt, they wanted so much to be here, that there's this time of crisis, this few-hour period where you're in severe crisis, and you think, you don't think I want to die. What you think is, I want to end the pain, right? And if you could talk to someone just then, if you can just make it through those few hours, you will make it. Like, it won't all get better in the morning. It won't be just go away, but what you're feeling will pass. And there's a lot of things out there to help you, therapy, and a lot of good antidepressants now. When my mom was suffering from depression, the drugs sucked. They helped kill her. She was on the equivalent of a mix of, it's not these drugs, but they do the equivalent thing of Ritalin, Ambien, and Xanax, like just a sort of cocktail of it, right? Which is a terrible mix of stuff. But now the drugs are really good. You have to maybe try more than one. The first one may not be perfect for you, but they really help, and if you're really suffering, there's no shame, there's no stigma in taking medication. You take blood pressure medication, or you take, medication for other things. Why would it be worse, to take it for your mind? The most important thing you have, so yeah. I have no idea what the question even was. I just rattled on.
Well, I want to talk to you about the colleges. So how are you getting booked to speak at these colleges? Are you preparing a press kit and reaching out? Are you sending them screeners of the film?
Yeah, everything we did with this movie was done with blind, plowing forward. We didn't know, and I say we because there was a lot of producers involved in this movie. It's not just me. I mean, there are days where it's me sitting here at this table and typing away, but I really have to acknowledge a lot of producers, Fiona Walsh and Matt Ema, but particularly Charlie Rexick is a guy who's a good friend of mine. He's in the movie. He's the musician who created all of the music, and we follow him. But Charlie's been unbelievable resource and just searching out contacts for all of the colleges, really going out, just plucking email after email, putting it together in a database, sending it. We sent out an initial kind of email blast saying, a one-pager saying, hey, here's what the movie is. Here's where you can see the preview. We had a good website up with a lot of stuff on it, reviews from some critics, positive reviews from early groups that had seen it, and our preview and information about the movie. So we sent out an initial blast, and anybody who responded to that blast, then we said, okay, if you want to see it, we had a secure online site where they could then go watch the movie themselves to make sure, hey, is this appropriate for our college? And it was great, and we got a lot of really good responses, and it helped. The thing with this movie is, if you see it, you'll book it. If you see it, you'll like it. And until you see it, you'll think you're not gonna. You think, oh, you know what, it might be depressing, or tonight's not a good night. I hear over and over, I'm sure you guys weren't guilty of that at all. But,
you can sense it in our laughter, absolutely.
But then we watched it, and it changed our mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with the colleges, it was to our benefit to get them to see it. And once we did, then we set it up where, some of the colleges would just, screen without me there, but some of them also had me come out and speak, and I would do a presentation before and then a Q&A after. And at some schools, I would also go into class. I like to go in and lecture in classes, whether it's film or psychology or whatever. I used to do some teaching at UCLA, and I really enjoy that back and forth. I really enjoy, even if someone says, oh, well, yeah, I don't think this is right, or I don't think you're, we got plenty of responses back, because it wasn't just colleges. We also got in touch with a lot of mental health organizations, thousands of them. And some got back and said, yes, thank God, someone's doing this movie, great, we'd love to show it. And others said, this is inappropriate, screw you. We did get some negative reactions from the preview and things. And I'd get into a discussion with them. We get, okay, well, what is it about the film that let me know. If I'm wrong, let me know where I should correct myself. What am I saying that's incorrect? And again, usually when they saw the movie, they might not book it. Some would, some wouldn't, but usually they would not be as negative as they were off the initial concept, like just the idea that we could use humor. But to me, it's just too much to watch. You have to make a movie, no matter what your movie is, and there will be those who disagree with me, but I feel that there has to be, or in the way that I like to approach projects, I feel there has to be some level of entertainment, even in the toughest subject. Otherwise, it's a lecture. And I know there are wonderful, wonderful documentaries out there that are, not laugh riots. But I do think you owe it to the audience. You're saying, like, look, I get it. This is a tough subject to talk about. So let's find a way to frame it that I can keep you involved. And even if you look at the way that I structure the movie itself, if I've done my job correctly, we start with some humor and kind of get you in, and we get you a little comfortable. We sit you into the bath and let you settle it a little bit. And then it gets a little more challenging. Then there are interviews that might make you cry or might, stir up some stuff inside you. But then we back off and give you a little more comedy and a little more lighter stuff. And then we kind of come back. We push. There's a point in the film about 2/3 of the way through that I always think when I go see the movie, and I've seen it now hundreds of times and certainly dozens of times with audiences, where I think if they can make it through this, like there's one section that's pretty challenging that has a couple of challenging interviews and maybe a slightly unsettling performance, the commedia performance with restaging my mom's death. And I'm like, if you can make it through those, then you're fine. Then you're home free. Like now there's nothing but comedy coming at the end, nothing but comedy and uplifting stuff. And I just think that you owe it to your audience to help them with the experience, to not hammer them over the head so hard that they can't stand up at the end of it. And that doesn't mean you make light of the subject. I'm still going to see a movie. I'm still watching a movie, and if I want a lecture, I'll ask for a lecture. But if I want to be told what to think, then I'll ask you for that. But hopefully, in this movie, I give you a little leeway to find your own feelings. And I have gotten responses from people who have walked me through like their emotional state, like in the movie, and they're like, it was really funny, and I was really happy to be there, and then I was really sad, and I thought, screw you, Mike, why have you done this to me? Then I was really happy to get, and and hopefully, I made the film hoping that you'll take the whole ride, and by the end, it's worth it. And because I don't know, like if you watch half the movie, what you get out of it. I have to assume you're going to watch the whole thing. The funniest thing that I've run into at some colleges is, and I can't imagine this is true, but maybe the world has changed. They say, do you have a shorter version of the movie? Our students won't watch an hour and 37 minutes. Only an hour and 37. I'm like, really? Like a student can't possibly watch more than 45 minutes of anything. And to me, that's a sad state if that's true. I don't think it is, but I have gotten that request. And the answer is no. If you can't make it to an hour 37, you don't need to bother with my movie.
I mean, Mike, you're talking about screening on college campuses for students, and at the top of the show, you mentioned that you made this film specifically with that kid in the dorm room who was going to come across this, and possibly this film could impact their life. Has the film screened for that student? I mean, is there any kind of success story you can share with us?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the nicest success stories, I mean, all stories are continuing, so but at least at this point, one of the most gratifying stories, and there have been quite a few, is actually in the movie, would be Linda. It's not a student, but Linda, who was who lost her daughter, and she was a professional painter and was not able to paint. And though I will give away something in the movie, I think you can still enjoy it with. She was in a pretty tough state when she came and did the interview with us. And I think the interview helped maybe nudge her in a slightly different direction, where she then was able to get back to painting and was able to paint her daughter, and I think was able to kind of get back into her life. And I know she's doing really well now. I don't in any way try and take credit for that. That's Linda working through a tough issue, and Linda really being open to getting back into a life, right? So I'm not saying that we did it, but I think that even she would say that we helped. We helped a little bit. And I have had many people get in touch with me who said, I had one person that I know who said her family had struggled with suicide and had suicide in the family, and they'd never talked about it. And she said that after the movie, she talked to her mother and brought up the fact that she'd seen the movie. And the mother then talked for an hour and a half straight about the suicides in their family and all these things. And the whole family started talking to each other, and they were engaging in ways that they never had. And her mother said to her, well, you know, I wouldn't have talked about this, but you kept going on and on about this movie. And my friend said, Mom, all I said was I saw a movie about suicide. And even if that's what we're doing, even if you hate our movie and you just say, I saw a movie about suicide that I hate, and now it spurs a conversation, you know, great. I think that, you know, it is the responses that I've gotten from students and also from mental health professionals who we've also spurred a lot of debate within large groups that deal with grief groups and suicide survival and all those kind of things. We've spurred some good debate where some people say you can't have a movie where you talk about how someone attempted suicide, which we do. You know, someone talks about jumping off a bridge. And you can't have a movie where there's humor, and you can't have a movie where there's an animation even for 1 second that someone puts a gun to their head. And I should say in the movie there are no dead bodies. And there are no gruesome scenes which often accompany these movies. And I agree that you should never glamorize suicide, and we don't. But there's something called suicide contagion, which the media deals with and which people in the mental health field deal with. And so there's a lot of debate over what you can say, how you can say it, and all those things. And I think that our movie has been shown to a lot of groups and a lot of leaders of these groups, and has spurred a lot of talk and debate, and has spurred talk in some of those groups that maybe we need to re-examine how we're approaching this. Because my question is, of course you need to treat the subject with respect, and you should never ever glamorize suicide, but you also need to draw in people to watch your movie. And if you're making movies or videos that no one is watching, you're not helping anyone. And I had a psychologist who's the head of a large department at a university say to me, in his view, and this is his view, not mine, but he said, I think in some ways, the people in my business are causing more problems than helping. That there's so much fear of saying the wrong thing that nothing's getting said, and that's contributing to people's deaths. So I hope in some way we're spurring a debate, even if the debate in the end, the decision is a movie like Mike's should never be shown. That's okay, at least if that discussion goes back and forth, you know?
Well, going back to the movie, now you talk about, what is it, Dias de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead?
Yeah, Dia de los Muertos, yeah.
Okay, so, and you say in there, it's interesting, according to the Day of the Dead, they say we sort of die 3 times. Once when our heart stops, twice when they bury us in the ground, and then third, when the last person we know dies who cannot retell stories of us.
Yes.
And I thought that part was very interesting because... you know, it shows you and your sister talking about your mom and reliving some of those memories. But of the families that you've met that have lost someone or have lost friends, how many people sort of bury this person in a box in a room and keep all their stuff there and then never go back to it? And then how many people share memories and laugh and say, I remember so-and-so would have loved this?
Yeah, I mean, I really encourage people to do that. Mm-hmm. Dia de los Muertos to me is one of the best holidays out there. The idea is honoring people who've come before us, telling funny stories about them, sharing their lives. You put up a big altar and you put all sorts of stuff on it. You know, you put pictures of people you love, but you also put out like the food they like, the booze they like to drink, cigarettes they smoke. The idea is you're inviting them back to a party, right? So you gather up everybody, and then, you know, everybody has different traditions. The tradition we have, and we have a pretty big Day of the Dead party every year that grows every year, is that we go around and people tell funny stories about the people they've lost. And there's no disrespect in those stories, but it is, you know, someone told a story about how his grandmother lived to be 96. She smoked her whole life. In the last 2 years of her life, she quit smoking because she was so senile she forgot she smoked, right? And it was just a funny story of her, and the cigarettes were, you know, like that. He remembered his grandmother and smoking and the warmth that he felt, you know, there, right? So this movie was made as a Day of the Dead altar. We took everyone that means something to us, all those who've passed before, and we built an altar to them. And for me, it's also an altar to my mother, who loved music, comedy, dance, right? So in this movie is music, comedy, dance, and there's my mother's picture at the top of the altar, and we honor at the end of the movie, certainly everyone. And to me, that's what you do to break this stigma. You talk about the lives of these people and why you love them and why you care about them, right? And you share they're living sort of anima, right? And you don't put them away in a box. And you're right. In the movie, we actually literally have boxes. I have 6 boxes that had everything my mom ever wrote and pictures and all these things. And I was looking through them for the first time. My dad had them away in a garage, and I had not seen them since I was a kid, and I had not listened to tapes of my mother's voice since she had died. And so I guess metaphorically and literally, we were taking parts of mom's life back out of these boxes and letting them live and letting them breathe. And I cannot stress enough how cathartic it will be for you whether you've lost someone to suicide or whether you've lost them to anything else, whether they're just not with you now, to open up those boxes, look at those pictures, remember the funny stories, share them, call up your family, call up your friends, talk about whoever it is you lost, right? Let them live again through you, through your stories, and through the movies that we make, right? You bring these people back to life. They're here, they're part of you, and soon we're not going to be here either. And I hope someone's around to tell my story. I hope someone's around to tell my wife's story, to tell my family's story. And I can't think of a better way to honor people than to share a laugh. I'm all about, my whole life has been, I've written comedy and directed comedy and been around it in theater and all these things my whole life. And so in my world, that's how you express yourself. And that's why I approach the film this way. I can only look at things through that lens. And I think that it helped me to cope when my mom died. It's helped me through other difficult times. And I imagine in talking to you guys and also reading your stuff and hearing you talk, I know you're sort of the same way. And I hope that, and when you're talking about having lost people recently, I hope that you're sharing those positive things about them. It's none of my business, but I encourage people, because this movie, a really important thing about this movie is it's not about suicide. It's about communication. It's about whatever it is that you're afraid of, whatever it is that you just think that if you say it, it'll be too scary, right? And it's about moving past that. I had a friend his parents went through a difficult divorce. He said this movie could have just as easily been about divorce, about the silence that surrounds that, right? And it is, like, to me, I have so many flaws, but one thing I'm not afraid to do is talk about stuff. I like it. I find it, see, I'm a crazy person, so I like the darker and the scarier, the more I like it. The more it's interesting to talk about to me. And that's how especially when I was in New York, but my comedy came from death and mental illness and suicide and all those things, because I was naming what scares me. That's what comedy is. It's a way to name that scary thing. And once you name it, everyone laughs. Their laughing is supporting the idea that they feel the same way. They're like, oh yeah, I was scared of that too, right? So yes, that incredibly long answer would be yes. People do put other people away in boxes, and please don't open up the boxes.
Well, I want to take a sort of supernatural turn for a second because I'm very attracted to that. A book that's of interest to me is Dr. Edith Fiore's *The Unquiet Dead*. I don't know if you've ever read it. You can Google her on YouTube. Fascinating lady. So she talks about death being like we shed this overcoat and we take on another form, what she calls a sort of an energy matrix. And that many people who have, had emotional pain while living and then they die still need to stick around on this earthly plane to sort of figure out what it was that was troubling them. So of the people that you've talked to, did anybody have any kind of afterlife interaction with family or friends that had passed away as a result of suicide?
Not that I know of, but, I think that there are a lot of people. I mean, I know Linda in particular, the woman I was talking about earlier, felt a very strong, still connection to her daughter and felt, I think that many of her feelings were somewhat similar to what you're talking about. I know that certainly people I've talked to feel a closeness with the person they've lost or the people that they've lost, and that in more than just we remember them type way, but a real connection. And I did not dig as deeply into that in the film, but I think that whether or not it's an actual electromagnetic connection, or whether it's just their DNA in your body. You know, you are these people. I mean, I am so big. My mother is such a big part of me, in more than just a, you know, memory sense. You know, we're built from them, right? We're built from other people, and you can't get around that. So so yeah, I do think that there is certainly an interconnectedness, you know, with us all, and that you know, hopefully reaching out and sharing with each other just draws that closer, you know, and keeps us from dividing away from each other and pushing away from each other. So, you know, yeah, I mean, yes, I think there's, I would certainly subscribe to the idea that somehow we're all pretty connected. You know, I'm not sure, I don't really understand how it is, but.
Mike, you know, you're from San Diego. You know, you've said on your Facebook page that you've watched Junior Seau play football in high school. You followed him, you know, followed his career when he was at USC. And then obviously, you know, he played professionally for many years in San Diego as a Charger.
Yeah.
The news broke this week. You know, obviously that, I mean, you know, his suicide breaks this week, and obviously that hits home for you with that connection you have to him. Can you share maybe some of your feelings and some of the thoughts that maybe we aren't seeing the media cover?
Well, I think the thing that fascinates me the most is that people seem to need him to have died because of the concussions he suffered in football. That and that may well be true. You know, that I'm not disputing that science, and that may well have contributed to whatever mental state that he was in when he died. But I guess what interests me is why do we need that so much? Why would it be shameful if Junior Seau died because he was having a difficult emotional time, or he was in a tough state, or he was suffering from mental illness? I read an article yesterday by a sports writer, I think, who meant well, and I think his message was correct. He wrote an article about, we don't really know these athletes. He said, you know, I cover these athletes, and you know, you can't know them. But then he gave a bunch of examples of athletes who had done bad things, like we don't know them, and you know, this running back ended up being busted on a cocaine bust. I thought he was the nicest guy, but he had a cocaine bust, and somebody else was taken away from this other crime. Everyone was crimes, and then there was Junior Seau, as if what Junior Seau had done, his implication was shameful or morally weak. And I know that, I'm sure he did not mean that. I'm sure he was meaning it as you just can't know and all these things. But I think, you know, I'm sure there were many different reasons, many different things that contributed to Junior Seau's death. And he was a complex guy and a really good guy. I mean, he was, and that's what people can't make the connect. They go, he was a really good guy. How could he kill himself? Those are not mutually exclusive. You know, you can be a really good guy or a really good woman and kill yourself. And you can love your family and you can love your friends and still kill yourself. Yes, you were in a difficult state. But that does not make you any less of a good person. And I was, you know, a friend of mine said after seeing the film, and I guess I hadn't thought this way, so I didn't realize maybe how much a lot of people feel this way, but he said before he saw the movie, he always thought of people who killed themselves as selfish. He sort of thought in the times that had happened in his life, he thought, well, kind of, what a jerk. Like, how could that person do that? What a jerk. And someone even says that in an interview in the movie, you know, what an idiot, right? But he said after the movie, not long after he saw the movie, a friend of his committed suicide. And he said for the first time he understood that she wasn't a jerk for doing this, right? She was in pain. And this occurred. And it's a terrible tragedy. And we all wish that she would have been able to talk to someone and been able to work through it. But she was not doing it to show anyone else or to teach a lesson to anyone, you know? She was doing it for her own personal reasons. And Junior Seau could be a great person who people love, and he could still kill himself. It does happen. And now the thing is, hopefully for his family and his friends and his fans, to still celebrate him and to love who he was, to remember who this guy was, and to think of him not only on the football field, but also the guy, you know, like me, loved going to the beach every day. He lived across the street from the beach, and he went in the water and he swam, and he, you know, that happy guy, yes, he died of suicide, I don't know, would it made you happier if you had gotten hit by a truck? You know, like why is it that that now just everything else gets wiped away? I say on the website and have said other places that you know, we don't think of George Washington as the president who you know, died of a throat infection, and we don't think of Albert Einstein as the physicist who died of an aneurysm. But if either one had killed themselves, that would have been the headline, and that's all we'd remember. George Washington was the president who committed suicide, and that's the way it goes. You know, you die that way. That's how we're going to define you, and that's a ridiculous way to define someone. Ridiculous, you know. You know, I know people don't do it out of malice, but think about it. You know, yes, people die in all sorts of weird ways.
Mike, you know, we've created a wonderful backdrop here to really get into talk about, you know, making this film. I mean, when you started with this film, you know, you had the idea of like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do here. But at that time, you know, you had no money, you had no crew, you know, you didn't even have the people you were going to film, and you know, the subjects that you're going to put in the film. So how did it start to come together?
Well, I think the really important thing was, once I decided to make the movie was going to get made. And that makes the difference. It wasn't, well, if I get funding, or if I get enough of celebrities attached that I can interview, then I'll do it. It was, I'm making this movie. Now, if I make this movie by myself, then that means what's the first thing I got to do? I got to get a camera. Fine, I got to learn how to use that camera better. But I will make it by myself because I want it to get made. And once I did that, one by one, people said, all right, let me be a part of this. Jay Lafayette is my director of photography, really good DP who can make a lot of money with a lot of people anytime he wants. But he knew that I was committed to it. He was interested in the subject. I think he wanted to do something interesting and challenging. So, okay, he's in. Now two of us push forward, right? And Matt Emick comes to me as a producer and says, you know, all right, I'm in. This is something that's important to me. I'd like to learn more about this subject. I believe in what you're doing. Fine, 3 people. Fiona Walsh, who I didn't even know that well, great line producer. She shows up at a restaurant one day. A friend had told, you know, we were meeting at the Overland Cafe. Our production meetings were like over, you know, 5-hour coffees over, you know, at Overland Cafe. They hated us. We tipped really well. We did tip really well, I promise. But, you know, Fiona showed up, and here's someone who, you know, works all the time. There's no reason she should take months off to do this movie. But for whatever reason, what was going on in her life right then told her, I want to do this. This is important to me too. And you do. It is, you know, the ant and the rubber tree plant, right? But it kept growing because everyone one by one said, we are making this movie. And the most important thing to me then in doing this was, this movie will be made, and not only will it be made, it will be seen. Because now I owe that to everyone else. I have made this promise to them. They have all come on without taking any money, anything else. Now this movie has to be made. I think if it had been just me, maybe a month or 2 down the line, maybe I would have been like, oh, I've failed. Like everything I thought was going to happen wasn't going to happen, right? But because now there were people involved, well, I got to do something. And so it became a great lesson in, everything fell apart. You know, interviews we thought we'd have weren't there. Locations we thought we'd be at weren't there. You know, equipment doesn't work. A sound guy can't make it. Or, you know, all the things that everyone goes through with independent film. But it was, this is getting done tomorrow. Tomorrow is a shoot day. So how are we going to make this happen? How are we, you know, how do we facilitate the day to be the best day we can? And the things that got discovered were better than what we had planned. You just have to give in to that. And ride the wave. When I did a documentary years back, sort of fluffy documentary, where I talked to a lot of big wave surfers about what's it like when you go under, you know, a 50-foot wave, and every one of them said, you just got to relax and let go. That if you fight it, you'll die. But if you just let go and just let the wave take you where it needs to take you, you'll be okay. And we let this film take us where it wanted to take us, and it meant that. Yes, I had a hip-hop choreographer who I thought was going to show up with all these sort of 20-something hotshot dancers, and the first day of rehearsal, she showed up with a bunch of teenagers. Which, if I had known ahead of time, I'd been like, "Oh, good Lord, no, we're not going to do like this is a weird juxtaposition." Well, those kids were much better than anyone I could have asked for in the business, you know, and over and over that happened where we. There's a scene, again, that sort of more intense scene I was talking about with the 2 clowns, where I'm doing a staging of a piece. And I didn't know them well. I only knew one of them, sort of, a little. We had done like a photo shoot with Roger. And he said, well, there's this other woman, Jessalyn. She's really talented. She might be willing to do it. And timing-wise, people I thought I might use weren't available. And we showed up, and Jessalyn was one step away from walking out. Not because of anything bad on her side, but it was a weird scene. It was late at night in an almost deserted warehouse, a really cool space actually downtown, but a kind of cold and drafty warehouse. And we had been filming all day, and we didn't have a lot of time, and they didn't know what was going on. And I was like, okay, we're going to restage my mom's suicide. Ready? Action. And Jessalyn was, I think, seriously thinking about leaving, but she stuck around and she gave an unbelievable performance. And if I had had a budget and if I had had time, I might have been able to say that night, oh, you know what, it's late, and Jessalyn maybe isn't totally feeling it because it's a little weird, and maybe we should just reschedule, right? But we didn't. We pushed forward, and she gave an extraordinary performance, and so did Roger, and I learned something very important for future work, because I try to control things a lot of times, and I learned that just let it take you where it's going to take you. Make your plans, be prepared. Have all sorts of contingency stuff ready, but then when it happens, just let it happen. Like, don't try and, cling to your original plan, because you'll sink.
Well, another YouTube video I was watching the other day was of therapist Junior Seau. She's a great She talks a lot about family issues, and she says it's not what happens to us in life, it's how we cope. So what I noticed from the documentary is you seem to cope incredibly well. Maybe this was just in front of the camera, but
I can send you some sources that might disagree.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll play this video back for them. I'm sure they'll enjoy it.
I'm certifiable.
Okay, but what I saw in the video, though, in your film, was that you were a survivor, and I could see this, full steam ahead. This movie's being made, and that you took yourself out of yourself and your own problems, and you interviewed these other people, whether they were survivors of suicide or people that have lost people. And I'm wondering, is this something then, and I think you've already alluded to it, that this was a learned trait for you? This not something that you were born with, being this sort of, the show must go on and carrying forward?
Well, I think the show must go on has been something that's been a part of me for a long time, but I think there's two different things. I ran a small theater company in New York for many, many years, and we did weird performance art. We sort of billed ourselves as Monty Python meets Merce Cunningham. It was a cross between weird, dark sketch comedy and modern dance, so odd. And we would perform in sewers and on the sides of buildings and in crazy spaces, and at times the company would have a majority of people in the company didn't speak English. They spoke Italian and Japanese and Dutch and other things, but not English. So I would have to stage pieces in other languages, but that made it better. But the interesting thing was, in New York in small theater, which I did for many years, there always had to be, hey, things are going to happen. Life's going to get weird, and you just kind of do the best you can. But when I came to Los Angeles and I started working in more commercial television, then it became, I lost a little bit of that sense of hey, let it happen, because you have budgets and you have a crew and you have a staff and you have all these people. So you go, no, we will control it. We will make, no, we control the day. And we planned this, so this is what we're shooting, and you think you have control and you really don't. But and you make something a little worse. In some ways, a bigger budget sometimes will make you make worse art, because you come in with your preconceived notion and you have enough money to just jam whatever you thought you were going to do down, make it happen, and then put it up, and you're like, there, it's done. We got it done. But now, even when I find, as I am embarking again on more sort of commercial television work, that spirit that I had in New York that worked so well on the film also works even in larger budget stuff, that you still should embrace the unusual, the unexpected, and let it happen. Try it out. The biggest mistake that I made when I became a professional, right? When you become, when you join DGA and you say, oh, now I'm no longer an independent artist, right? I'm now a very accomplished person. Was that I decided to try to do things that I thought other people might like. And I tried to, and I would play it safe. I found myself playing things really safe. You know, we did it. But I didn't trust my instincts, my gut instincts, and it made me really frustrated, and it made mediocre work, and it made me a sort of mediocre director. And so this film really helped bring me back to the idea that, for better or worse, if you hire me for a project or if it's my project, we have to go with my instincts and go with whether I think something's funny or not funny, or whether I think something's interesting or not interesting. Like, that's why you brought me here. And I don't think that sometimes my employers were telling me that I shouldn't use my instincts. I was doing it. I was censoring myself, because you go like, oh, well, there are a lot of people who do this, right? And you know, well, they all seem to do it a different way. What I realize is, hey, you know, everybody should have a different way. You should, you know, you should embrace your oddness, and if somebody doesn't want you, they'll stop hiring you, you know. But yeah, so I was prepared. Small theater prepared me well for independent film. They are very they are close. They're not just cousins; they're brother and sister. You know, when I was in, I don't think he'll mind. I won't say his name, but a good friend of mine who is a very accomplished and very well-respected director in the theater. I was out doing a appearance in Pennsylvania, and it was at a small college. And I was out at his house. He has a place out there. And in the morning, the film that I was supposed to be staging, I mean, the film was supposed to be on a campus, but the room hadn't been rent. You know, indie film, right? They didn't have the room they were supposed to have, so there was nowhere to show it. So the student group who'd arranged it was like, well, we're going to show it in a sorority in like a living room somewhere. So I'm busy with a 19-year-old sorority girl on the phone, like trying to book my film. And I'm writing down stuff. And this director, who I tell you has already gotten Lifetime Achievement Awards and is a very well-recognized theater director. And theater does not pay money, right? I'm writing the instructions on the back of his food stamps application, and showed it to him, and we were like, "This is the meeting of independent film and independent theater. Writing instructions to screen your film somewhere they don't want you, on someone else's food stamp application, you know." And so theater prepared me well for indie. There's no question about that.
That's interesting.
And also, I think that there's another similarity: theater and dance. I also come from the dance world. Something I love about dancers is that no one becomes a dancer to be famous. It doesn't happen, right? Yeah, there are, you know, name how many dancers you actually know their names, right? So people become dancers because they want to dance, and because they want to be a part of that world, and that everything about their experience in that room and on that stage makes it worth it, right? And that's why you go into independent film. That the only reason to go into independent film is because you have to say what you want to say, because you want to be in that room, because you want to be working with those people. Because like dance, if you're doing independent film, the odds are you are not going to make money off of this, and you are not going to be famous, even though it is a movie. You know, as many of your guests and you guys, you know, can well attest, you'll be writing stuff on the back of food stamps, right?
Much, yeah.
But that's okay. But that's okay.
Actually. Yeah.
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 Nice. I'd love that.
Well, how long was the production of the film?
You know, the first interview we did was with Judith, and probably the major part of shooting did not take that long. We probably shot the vast majority of it in about 3 months, because we didn't have any money. Like, we could only afford so many shoots. Post-production was much longer. Gail Yasunaga was my editor, who's amazing, and if you look her up, she's done all sorts of great indie films. She's also my next-door neighbor. That's the only way I got her,
nice.
Was that the commute was fantastic.
You gave her the parking space next to
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I totally lied to get her, and hopefully she won't watch this. But she's, you know, I knew of her. I mean, I knew her work, and she is next door. Her husband also is a very successful filmmaker, and she said, I thought, well, maybe if I ask Gail, I said, Gail, do you know any young editors who might be interested in working on a film? And you know, I'm doing a little independent thing, and it's not really going to pay, and you know. And she said, well, you know, what about me? And I said, oh, you know, I'd love to have you, but you know, I can't pay you your rate, and I can't, you know. She said, well, let me look at, you know, some of the footage. Let me just take a look at it. And I brought over a couple of things I knew were pretty good. And the next day she came back and said, like, I'll do it, right? So it was great. But I have no idea why I brought up Gail right now. I just totally lost my train of thought. But yes, so you asked me a good question, and I totally forgot. I was talking about Gail. This is what happens, folks. Too many years.
The length of the production, you said 3
Yeah,
months?
so thank you. Thank goodness my keeper is here. The edit process was much longer than I was used to because when it comes to being in LA, my vast amount of experience is in television. So you knock out an hour or 2 hours in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 8 or 10 weeks. And so that part of the process was a learning experience for me because it was much slower, but not because Gail was just so into the details and was able to find things that I never would have found with this movie and was able to bring a sort of beauty and maturity to it that, I would never have gotten. I would have just slammed things together. And then Vicki Rose Sampson came on to do sound, who she's done, little films like Star Wars and Donnie Darko and things like that. And so I thought again, like sound mix, right? Sound mix to me in television is like 3 or 4 days, like, maybe a week, maybe 2 if you're really getting crazy. But sound mix was like 6 weeks. I was like, oh my God. So post full time probably was 9 months, So yeah, I would say about a year and a half probably from first interview to absolute lock, and that was a lesson. I'm really glad that I love my film and that I love doing it and I love watching it. That sounds very vain, but I can't imagine not liking the film you made and being stuck with it for years. Like I'm going to spend I just got back from the road going out and going to colleges. And then we have in the fall, we're having a festival called Day of the Living, where we're going to invite theater companies. Well, we already have invited some theater companies, dance companies, artists and filmmakers to participate in creating work that's in a sort of spirit of our movie, dealing with mental illness and suicide. So we're going to do that festival the first week of October. And then I'm going to go back out on the road with the movie. Our sort of official premiere will be then. Everything up to now has been free sneak preview. So I will be with this movie for, close to 3 years by the time I'm not, on it somewhat full time. I don't know how you could make a movie that didn't matter to you. I can't imagine it. You're with it for so long, which everyone out there is like, of course, idiot. Like everyone else is filmmakers. They all get it, right? But I didn't really understand. This is my first feature. So I had heard it, you're with a film for 3 years, but you really are with the film for 3 years. That's amazing. You guys how long have you been working on yours? About 3 years?
3 years. 3 years. We still haven't shown it yet. So yeah.
Very exciting. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. And a subject that I know well as a long-time actor who no longer really acts. I that subject.
Yeah, art imitating life.
Yeah, we like to get your take on it when the time comes, Mike. We definitely got to get your take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the easiest part of making the film?
Well, the easiest part was that the film was going to get made. That there was no back and forth whether I was going to make it. And I think that sometimes people they spend years deciding, is this the right project? Is this the wrong project? And I guess I should say I did start thinking about this movie about 3 years before I made it. So I guess I'm lying in some sense. I did postpone it. I have to say, I had an agent, again, when I was a big shot, I had an agent who wouldn't even say because I said, I want to make this documentary about suicide. It's really important to me. I'm going to talk about my mom. I'm going to do all these things. I didn't really know Judith's story, but I was going to be about my mom. And he wouldn't even acknowledge, he would almost look away from me and not even acknowledge that I'd said the words documentary and suicide. He would just go, okay, anyway, and then push on to some other project. So, but I think the easiest part probably, or the most fun part for me, were the days of shooting. I really am. I loved interviewing people for this movie, and I loved working with people. This movie is about when you get depressed, everything gets sort of gray, right? And you sort of lose your spark. The world becomes just sort of mushy. And for me, whether you're in a rehearsal room, whether you're in a dance room, whether you're in a writer's room of comics, like creating work, whether you're interviewing someone who you're interested in, that's fascinating. And I wanted to show in this movie, I figured if suicide is something that takes something away from the world, all of these creative entities and people sharing in this movie were adding back to this world. If you want to talk about the energy we were talking about before, like all this positive stuff was coming out of it. So every day we shot was fascinating for me. And was fun. It was fun to see people in their element. I love to see a choreographer working with dancers. I love to see a comic working with writers. I love to hear someone sharing a story that's important to them. So that, to me, I love being on that set. And that was a lot of fun. But everything about this movie was fun. There was frustration. There was challenges. There was, days of what are we doing? But it was a genuinely fun experience, and one that was incredibly important for me to do it at the time that I did it. So I don't think that there was any. It was fascinating for me, even at 4 a.m. doing a sound mix and being stuck on the same cue over and over. It was still the movie that I wanted to make. Every frame in this movie is exactly as I wanted it to be. And some people may not like the movie, and they may well be right. But there is nothing in this movie that I didn't want. So the easy part was the movie. The hard part now, I think, is, in listening to your one of your podcasts a couple of weeks ago when they was talking about 35 to 45,000 films, features made every year, 600 to Sundance, 200 to 600 on the circuit, 200 to Sundance, 40 get funding, right? I'm glad I didn't know that before I made the film. I still would have made it, but I might have been a little more sad. Probably the thing now, the hard part of this film is thinking, well, people may not see it. I know that we've already affected people. I know that we've already, if no more people saw it now, I know that it still was worth it. But I truly in my heart feel that we did make a film worth watching and did make an entertaining film and one that can really help. And I don't know how many people are going to see it because we don't have distribution. We have joked, but it's not really a joke, that if you have 10 people in a couch, I'll come show you the movie. I have gone, whether it is sororities in Pennsylvania, I have gone large and small. I've shown it in living rooms and I've shown it in big theaters, and that's great. But it's hard because you do go, oh, I'm showing this to, or you shove a theater of 200 people or 200 seats and 40 people because people are scared to death of the movie. So I guess the hard part will be letting it go if we didn't feel we got it out there. But the great thing is we never thought we'd make money. So in the end, we'll distribute it, for free. I'll go just throw discs into everybody's mailbox. I'll just randomly, drive around the city chucking discs out, if need be. But it is, as you know, and as any of your viewers and listeners know, it's a tough challenge. I mean, I don't know. I can't swear to you, and this is a terrible thing for someone without distribution to say, but I don't know if I went to the multiplex and I saw Don't Change the Subject, a movie about suicide. I don't know if I'd go see it. Maybe, but maybe I wouldn't. So I get it. I get why someone's not like, boy, we're going to make a mint on this. I think the only way that probably, we'll get distribution is if somebody wants to distribute something that they think is genuinely good and can genuinely make the world a better place. How many distributors feel that way? Well, you tell me. You know this field better than I do.
We just had a conversation just last week with a filmmaker named Dean Peterson, who has an independent film called Incredibly Small, which he took on the festival circuit for a couple of years, and then he finally said, you know what, we're just going to release it for free on Vimeo. And he's had tremendous success that way with almost 40,000 views just in a couple of weeks on Vimeo. So at the end of the day, you get your film seen. But I'm just wondering, it's easy to hear your passion for this film, for the subject matter. You're talking a little bit, about the making and about people seeing it. How important has it been to you to sort of take this film that's so personal to you and share it with that live audience?
Well, again, coming from a theater background, as a theater guy, nowhere am I more comfortable than standing in front of a crowd talking about myself. The vanity of the director, right? So, and about my life, I love engaging with an audience. I love hearing what they have to say and talking to them. I try not to get up and make a speech. I try to really to interact and to talk and to dig into it, right? I love that. That, has been incredibly important to me. And I think, again, the movie, has gone over well in places where I wasn't. But I think if I'm there, there's there is a context to it that helps. Because I think it's hard, you're on a college campus. I mean, some of these college campuses will show this movie like at lunch with people like in line, getting their salads and stuff. They'll show it just forever. Which God bless them for showing it. But sometimes if I'm there, at least I'm able to say, hey, here's why I made this movie. I'm a real person. This is important to me. Don't be scared. Stay in your seats. It's going to be okay. And again, just keep them there. And then they go, oh, right. This is, oh, this is pretty good. So yeah, it's incredibly important. I wish that I could really do it full time. Just keep going on the road. I would just do a little road show. But it's expensive. So I did a couple of months. I mean, our thing was we would give sort of this 6-8 month period from January on. We were sort of like, all right, we'll see how we do in festivals, but I'm not going to sit around and wait, to get accepted. We'll take it out semi-theatrical, get it to as many places for free as we can, and then after that, if we don't get something out of festivals, we'll just start, we'll continue it, but raise it to the level of going into public theaters and that kind of thing. And right now we've been pretty roundly ignored by festivals, so the next step will be back on the road. I'll be back on the road in September, and take it out probably to the end of the year. And who knows? I mean, the nice thing about this film is it's a bit of an evergreen. It's not specific. I mean, it'd be great if people stopped killing themselves. I'd be very happy to never have to show the film because everyone's happy. But it is a film that we could show in 10 years and that I could still go and be a part of. I mean, I'm looking forward to new projects too. I'm not just going to be the suicide guy, but yeah, it's very gratifying to share it with audiences and to get feedback and and especially young audiences. There's that great. It's a great age to when you're in college, like the amount of possibility and the way of viewing the world. There's almost a great arrogance to being young, and hopefully people are able to keep that all through their life. But there's nothing like a college student challenging you, even if they disagree with you. There's nothing like a 20-year-old being like, well, let me tell you about film, right? And
I'm probably dating myself here, but I remember them filmed Scared Straight, and that's timeless, But what are you doing specifically to drum up press aside from the whole college tour thing? You said that sort of the indie film scene is retreating a little bit from it. What else are you doing? You're reaching out to the therapeutic recovery.
I'm not sure the indie film scene's retreating. I think they just don't care. They're sitting somewhere over there, having a cappuccino.
Right.
But and don't get me wrong. Like I love indie film. I mean, I was reared on it. I love it. So I sit sadly outside their door saying, oh, I'd love to come in. But so I'm not in any way mocking the community. And I get why Sundance doesn't want a little film like ours. But they made a mistake. But the festival that we're doing in the fall, hopefully will also garner some press attention. We've also gotten the thing about the subject is there are people who are very passionate about it, and there are critics who are very passionate about it. So we've gotten very good feedback from a lot of people in the press saying, yes, we want to do a story. As soon as you distribute the film, as soon as you put it anywhere, we'll cover it. And we've already gotten some early reviews and some very nice things said by critics, especially in Great Britain. They seem to really like us in England. But so we hope that our festival, Day of the Living, in October, will be a kind of focus point to get some of that press coverage, simultaneous press coverage, and we will show the film in Los Angeles that first week in October, concurrent with the festival. And what we want for those who are listening, watching, is I would love to have some short films, 2 to 3 minute films to run before our film, to challenge some other filmmakers to put their spin on this subject, whether they do it in a humorous manner or to do it in a non-traditional manner in some way. We'd love to. We're inviting other filmmakers to submit to us. To go to our website. My email's on the website. Mike@don'tchangethesubject.org. Get in touch. Make something. Share in this. We look at the festival the same way we looked at the film, which is we're going with the wave. There are some artists I know that are going to be a part of it. It's all going to be under one roof. The dance, the theater, the art hanging on the walls will all be under one roof. So it'll be sort of a theatrical happening, right? And just down the street will be the movie. So it will all channel to one. And beyond that, there are definitely media outlets that are interested in talking about suicide. So our movie helps them to do that. you run into, again, that contagion argument. So some media places are really enthusiastic, others are terrified of saying the word suicide. But we've gotten some coverage. I think we'll get a fair amount more, because I think it is a life and death subject, and that isn't why I chose it. I didn't think like, man, this is it. We've got a captive audience, but it is a really important subject, and one that isn't covered that much. There are movies about suicide out there, but not that many. For a reason, because people are terrified. Why would you make a movie nobody wants to see? You know?
Yeah. Well, Mike, we appreciate you reaching out to us and sharing your story and this movie with us. I mean, this conversation has just been really meaningful to me. Just kicking back and just listening you go through all this, and I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think it's great, too, that you've made this film, because there are so many people that don't want to reach out to the medical community or their families or whatever about suicide. But what if they Google something in the privacy of their own dorm room, like you said, and they're able to find a resource like this, and it changes their opinion? And it's really a film, too, about the celebration of life. So it's not too scary. I think there are parts that it does take you there a little bit, but all in all, it doesn't leave you with that feeling. And I think you've done a beautiful job.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I hope that people, if you go to our website, at don'tchangethesubject.org, there are resources. There are a lot of mental health resources on there. There are a lot of funny stories from the movie. There are a lot of clips. There are a lot of things for whether it's a dorm room or your living room or wherever, go on there, get on our mailing list, and follow the journey with us, or join it. I hope that there's someone out there watching this that thinks, oh, that's important to me, or that sounds interesting, emails me and joins the team. Would they like to work at Day of the Living Festival? Great. Do they want to have me come to their city? Want me to sit on your couch and show you the movie? I will do it. I would love it. I look forward to meeting the newest members of our team. And in a sense, and I really appreciate you guys being a part of this and helping to give some exposure to the movie. And I also really appreciate what you're doing with your website, because I know how challenging that is to have something that is ongoing. It's one thing it's a good idea, and you go like, oh, we'll throw up some interviews, right? But to continually address this challenging field that we work in, and this field that talking about feeling suicidal, that can really put you down sometimes and make you wonder if you've made good choices. You guys are there as a great voice and a great source of information. I've learned a lot from your site, most of which, some of which I was like, oh, why did I make a film? But it's fun to see both your journey with your film and the journey that so many filmmakers are doing. And I know there are so many people out there like me who are just as passionate or more passionate about their projects, and that's great. I look forward to seeing their films too. I look forward to that, and however if somebody wants to get in touch with me and say, well, how did you do this? How did you get to colleges? How did you do whatever? Great, get in touch. I'll get back to you. I don't have that much going on in my life. So.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with filmmaker Mike Stutz about his documentary, Don't Change the Subject. For more on Mike and his film, please visit don'tchangethesubject.org. As he said, get in contact with him. His
email's there. You can email him.
Yeah, email him there. On Twitter, it is, let me see.
Suicide Blows.
Suicide Blows, which I love that Twitter handle.
Yeah.
And there you will get my random, odd sense of humor. It's not just suicide messages. There, you'll find out who I am. You'll find out how I deal with stressful situations. Certainly,
political musings and all of that.
And you can also find the Facebook page under "Don't Change the Subject."
And on IMDb under Mike Stutz.
Yeah,
long list of credits.
That's correct.
So well, thank you again, Mike, and thanks to Greg Phelan for introducing you to us. So.
Yeah, Greg Phelan. Talk about one of the nicest guys in the business, right? Greg Phelan.
Cool.
For those out there. He hooked us up, but Greg is one of those people that talk about everything he does comes from a positive place, and if we all could be so lucky to come from where Greg comes from, the world would be a better place.
Very true.
And I have a feeling you guys are the same, so it seems quite much like that. So.
Thank you.
All right, well, great talking to you guys.